Resourceful Designer, episode 165, Client Onboarding, part 6, Client Offboarding.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now, your host. He has a habit of repeating himself. That's right, he repeats himself. Mark DeCote.
Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is part 6 of the client onboarding process. Today, I'm going to talk about what happens after the project is done. And it's time to offboard the client, what it means, and how to do it right. Now, if you haven't listened to the previous episodes of this series, I suggest you go back to episode 160 and start from there, and listen to the whole client onboarding process before you get to this offboarding process. Now, I'm also going to share a resource of the week that is a design conference that you may be interested in if you live on the East Coast of the USA. Now, what have I been up to? Well, you want to hear an interesting story? In last week's episode, I talked about the importance of design contracts. Well, this week, I'm dealing with an issue because of a lack of a contract. Let me explain. You may recall several podcasts ago, I mentioned how I designed a logo and a website for a new company that my son was starting up with a couple of his school friends. My son just graduated from university, and he and a couple of his classmates were starting a company. And I decided to help them out by designing a logo and a website for them at no charge. Now, in the process of doing so, because it was for my son and I wasn't charging them anything, I decided to forego the use of a contract, or not even decided to forego. I just didn't use one. I never thought of it. It never crossed my mind for some reason. Even though last episode I said my policy is that if a project will generate any sort of money, whether it's income or raising funds for something else, I always use a contract. But for some reason, I didn't, because this was my son. I was helping him out with his new endeavor. Well, last week, my son informed me that he is no longer with the company. He decided to sign the paperwork to legally dissolve his stake in the partnership. And he left on good terms. It was just he decided that he wanted to move on to other things. And he felt that he just didn't have the time to fully devote himself to this project. So he decided to leave before it really picked up and got off the ground. So he's no longer part of it. Well, this week, one of his partners, the guy I was actually dealing with for the website and that, he contacted me to do a whole bunch of changes to the website. I informed him that, okay, no problem, I can do all these changes, but I'm going to have to charge you for the services. Well, I can tell you that did not go over very well. I explained to him that the only reason I was helping them out was because my son was involved with the project, and now that he's no longer with the company, I'm no longer offering my services for free. Well, they started accusing me of unethical behavior and trying to swindle them because now they've managed to secure some funding to get the company going. And they say, well, now that they have money, that's why I'm going after them and that. And I said, no. I said, I was helping out because of my son, and he is no longer part of this, so I am no longer inclined to do this. But here's the kicker. Because I never got them to sign a contract, I am under no legal obligations to continue doing this for free or to continue doing this at all. In fact, since when they started out and they really didn't know what they were doing, I registered the domain name for them under my account, and I'm hosting the website myself. So technically, I own their domain name, I own their website, and since there was no contract signed, I never signed over the intellectual property for the logo I designed. So technically, I own all that stuff still. Now, I'm not going to be heavy-handed. I'm not going to be undermined and go after them for it. They are free to use it. I designed it for that purpose, so I'm going to let them have it. I did it when my son was there. But because I don't have a contract in place, I'm not legally obliged to do anything special for them. In fact, if I had done a contract like I normally would, I don't know if I would be covered right now, because I don't know if I would have thought to include a clause protecting my involvement should my son leave the company. I would have had to include something that said, if he leaves, then from that point forth, I would be charging for the services. I don't know if I would have thought to put that in. Now, if it ever happens in the future, I will definitely put it in, but I don't know if I had. And if I hadn't put that in, and I just said that I was doing my services for free, and my son left, they could have held me to do the work because of the contract. So in this case, not having a contract actually saved my bacon. So it just goes to show you that when you're working with family or friends, things can get really tricky and complicated, whether you do have a contract or you don't have a contract. In this case, I was lucky. The fact that I didn't have a contract was to my benefit. I am in the process of transferring the website and the domain and everything over to them, and I'm wishing them the best, but if they don't want to retain my services, that's entirely their prerogative. I'm going to freely give everything to them, and I could still take credit for designing the logo. If they become big and become this big international company or something, I could still claim that I designed the logo for them. And if not, it's no big deal. So that was an interesting situation that happened to me this week. And now, as I mentioned in the intro, I've got a resource that if you are a designer on the East Coast, specifically around the New York City area, or if you will be around New York City on June 6th, you may be interested in attending Dribble's Hang Time, which will be taking place, as I said, on June 6th in New York City's Hammerstein Ballroom at the Manhattan Center. Now, Dribble's Hang Time is a one-day inspiration fest tailored specifically for designers. It's a full day of connecting, of learning, and of community. There's going to be a number of speakers offering hour-long sessions, fielding questions about tips, tricks, and best practices that working designers can utilize to get ready to take the next leap in their careers. Now, according to the website, Hangtime attendees can also expect design showcases, live drawings, workshops, discussion panels, case studies, fireside chats, and personal stories of living creatively, each in an intimate, limited seating setting for a meaningful conference experience. And of course, the day will be capped off by a huge networking after party where you get to hang out with other designers and design celebrities. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this to you as my resource is that Dribbble actually offered me $100 off the ticket price for any listener of Resourceful Designer. All you have to do when you sign up is use the code Resourceful. I've also created a special link if you want to check it out, which is resourcefuldesigner.com/hangtime, all one word, hangtime, and check out the conference. Now, I have a conflict. I would love to go attend this. New York isn't that far from me. It is reachable. But on June 6th, I have another prior commitment, so I won't be able to attend. But if you are in the area and you're interested and you want to save $100 off the ticket price, use the code Resourceful when you check out, or if you use the link resourcefuldesigner.com/hangtime, that will automatically deduct $100 off your ticket price. So thank you, Dribbble, for reaching out and offering this special deal to my listeners. I do appreciate it. And if you do attend the conference, please let me know. I'd love to hear how it went. And now, Client Onboarding, Part 6, Client Offboarding. Today, I want to talk to you about Client Offboarding. It's the final initial step in building that so important client relationship so that it lasts a long, long time. Now, for the past few episodes, I've walked you through the various steps on client onboarding, everything you need to do in order to turn a potential client into a paying client. Once again, if you haven't listened to those episodes, go back to episode 160 and start from there. But once the client is on board, you successfully went through that process and the client is now on board and you have their project. Is that the end of it? Of course not. The whole purpose of client onboarding is to create relationships with your clients. Well, what kind of relationship would it be if it ended once the project was over? Acquiring new clients is hard work, especially the type of clients that you want to work with, those that are willing to pay the prices that you're offering. But what's even more important is having those clients come back again in the future with even more projects for you. They say it takes roughly 5 times more time and energy to land a brand new client than it does to keep an existing client. If you get even 5% of new clients to come back to you again with a future project, you should be able to increase your profitability by anywhere from 25 to 125%. That's huge. That's why it's so important to create this relationships so that clients, once you're done their project, will want to use you again in the future. Now, the best way to keep an existing client is to impress them with good work and by exceeding their expectations. All the steps in the client onboarding process, the intro packet, the client meeting, the design proposal, and the contract are all used to impress good clients with your organization skills and your thoroughness, the stuff that you bring to your profession and that you offer to them. By setting high standards from the start, from the initial contact, you create a very strong impression that will encourage these clients to come back again and again and again. But in order to really hit the ball out of the park, you need to have a good offboarding strategy. So what exactly is client offboarding? Well, client offboarding is the process of finalizing the design project. It's the process of handing over everything you've promised to the client. It informs the client that their project is now complete. Should the client require your services again in the future, you'd be happy to help them. But it would be under the umbrella of a brand new project. Their current project is over. Where client onboarding was all about turning a potential client into a paying client, the whole point of client offboarding is to transition them from being a current client to a future returning client. So what exactly does client offboarding accomplish? Well, as I just said, it defines the end of a project. Have you ever finished a project only to have the client kind of linger on a little bit, asking for little adjustments here or a little bit more work? This is especially bad with websites. You launch a website, you think it's over, but then the client contacts you after the launch and asks you to make a few little changes. Can you do this? Can you do that? Well, do all these changes fall under the original project? Or is this now considered new work? Without proper offboarding, this whole area is kind of gray and it's hard to tell. Client offboarding clears up this confusion by informing the client that their project is complete and all future work will be considered a new project. In the same process, it also makes the client feel welcome to come back anytime. It's another way of showcasing your professionalism. For example, during my offboarding process for a website, I inform the client that they have 14 days in order to make changes. After those 14 days, the project is terminated and anything afterwards would be considered a new project. At the 14-day period, I contact the client, thanking them very much for their work and letting them know that the project is now complete. So it tells them this is the end of the project. Anything else you do is a new project. So you're setting firm expectations again, which is the whole client onboarding process brought in towards the end. Now, of course, just like the steps involved in client onboarding, you'll have to adjust your offboarding process to work for you and for your business. But generally, the process should look something like this. You've finalized your revisions, the client is pleased with what you've presented them, and they've approved the work. Now it's time to begin the client offboarding process. And here are various steps that should go into it. A project review. You need to go over the website, the logo, the poster, the trade show booth, whatever, the app, whatever you design for the client, you need to go over it with them. Show them the deliverables to make sure the client knows and understands what it is you are giving them. So there's a project review. Here's everything I've done for you. Do you understand this? Here it is. You go over any expectations that were in your initial proposal or your contract. As I said, I allow a 14-day period after a website launch for fixing small bugs and small errors, but after 14 days, any requests are considered a new project. Under the project review, I would let them know that information. Now, another element of client offboarding is providing the final files. If you designed a logo for somebody, well, you got to package up those logos and whatever other design stuff that you've done and hand it over to the client in an efficient manner. Now, if you're unaware of it, there's a really, really great app that was just launched. It's actually not an app, an extension for Adobe Illustrator called the Logo Package Express, which saves you a ton of time packaging up logos. It can convert an hour and a half's worth of time into just a couple of minutes. I've been fooling around with it and I've actually used it on 2 separate jobs already and absolutely love it. If you want to know more, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/thelogopackage. I did record a short video showing you how the whole thing works. And if you use Adobe Illustrator, I highly suggest you check it out and possibly purchase it for yourself. Now, in providing files to your client, If part of your package includes a style guide, this is where you would give the guide over. You would explain it to your clients, walk them through the guide, letting them know all the different elements to it. And for other stuff, like if it's not a logo or a print or some sort of design like that, say it's a website, providing the files or this section would include launching the websites, publishing content if it's an app or whatever. Whatever you were expected to give your client according to your proposal and your contract, this is the stage during the offboarding process where you hand it over to the client. As well as handing over the logo or the digital files or physical stuff or whatever, you also need to hand over access information. So if they have a website and they need login information, this is when you would give them that access. If you have them set up with analytics or if you're setting them up with emails or whatever, during the offboarding process is when you give them all the information how to do this. I personally usually provide a short video walking a client through how to use their website or whatever services I'm doing for them. Not so much for a logo or that, but if it's a digital thing, then I will create a short video using ScreenFlow and walk the client step by step how to do things. Now, I found that since I started doing this, since I started providing videos as opposed to written instructions, I find fewer clients are contacting me afterwards with questions. So it helps out in the long run that I have less people contacting me saying, how do you do this? I don't remember. They can just look at the video again. Now, if you're interested in knowing what software I use to do this, it's ScreenFlow by Telestream. And you can get to it at resourcefuldesigner.com/ScreenFlow. That is my affiliate link if you decide to check it out. Now, I think they may be Mac only. I'm not 100% positive on that. So if you're on a PC, I'm sorry that you might have to find another alternative if you want to create screen capture videos to provide to your clients. Now, of course, another very important part of your whole offboarding process is to send any final invoice that you may have. This, again, all goes according to your contract and your proposal. Maybe you got full payment, 100% payment up front, or you got half payment up front and half payment during a certain stage. If your payment schedule includes maybe payment before final delivery, or payment before intellectual property gets transferred over, or payment before the website launches, during your offboarding process is when you send the invoice and ask for that final payment according to your agreement. Now, a very important part of the whole offboarding process that a lot of people sometimes overlook is to offer more services to your clients. When you're finishing a project is the perfect time to explain once again, because you've already done this in your onboarding process using your intro packet, but you should once again explain to your client what services you offer and ask them if there's anything else you can do for them. Don't presume that the client knows what services you offer, even though you've already told them. The very second episode, the first episode of Resourceful Designer was a welcome episode. The first full episode, which is episode 2, was titled, Do Your Clients Know What You Do? And in it, I explained that you can have long-standing clients that have no idea what services you offer. I was on the phone this morning with a woman. I designed her website. I've designed 2 websites for her, one for her personal company and one for the larger company that she works with. Today, she asked me if I could recommend somebody to design a logo for her. She did not realize that with everything I've done for her, that I also design logos. And I've been working with her for years. So don't presume that a client knows what services you offer. Let them know, explain it, especially in this offboarding process when they're wrapping up the project with you, is the perfect time to let them know what other services you can offer them. Also part of the process, but more after everything else is done, after payments received, after stuff is transferred over, you've given them the files, you've launched the website and everything, send the client a thank you message. Thank the client for choosing you. They could have used any designer out there, but they chose to hire you. So make sure they know how grateful you are. Now, you could send them an email or call them up on the phone, but a handwritten note sent in the post goes a long way and is much more memorable than an email or phone call. Now, if they were a really good client or a lucrative client, you may consider sending them some sort of thank you gift, whether it's a thank you basket, a fruit basket, or a bouquet of flowers or whatever, some personalized gift. Unexpected gifts are a very fun way to make the client feel important and valued, and they will want to come back again in the future. Now, in the whole thank you process, You also want to include a follow-up and an ask for feedback. So follow up after the fact. In my case, a website, 14 days later, I contact the client and I ask them, the 14 days are up. Is everything okay? At this point, we're going to have to start a new project if you want anything else done. So follow up. Make sure the client is satisfied with the way the project turned out. If this was some sort of event, maybe you were designing a poster for an event, or maybe it was a logo for a new startup and they were about to launch, inquire how the event went. How did their launch go? How is business turning out for the new startup? Make sure you ask them, follow up with this sort of information. Make them know that you are concerned, or maybe concerned is not the word to use. Let them know that you are interested in their success. They will appreciate you much more for it. Now, this is also the perfect opportunity when you're asking them how everything is, what they think about the project. Are they satisfied? When they say, oh yeah, for sure, we definitely are. This is the perfect opportunity to ask for feedback. Get them to send you a testimonial for your services that you can use on your website, on your own marketing material. When it's fresh in mind is the perfect time to ask for testimonials. Now, speaking of asking, this is also the perfect opportunity when the positive experience of working with you is fresh in the client's mind. It's the perfect time to ask the client for referrals. They might not know anybody right then and there, but if you ask them when they're in a positive frame of mind, they'll remember that later on whenever the opportunity arises. They'll want others to experience the great journey that they had with you. And because of that want to spread that experience, they'll be more willing to spread the word about your services anytime the topic comes up. Don't always presume that a client will refer you or talk about you. Give them permission to. Let them know you want them to. And finally, celebrate the project. In other words, announce your part in the client's journey by sharing your work. Share it on social media. If you add it to your portfolio, make sure you let the client know. Don't just add something to your portfolio and think, oh, great, now I got this beautiful piece. Let the client know that you are putting it in your portfolio. It makes the client realize that, wow, it must be really special if they want to showcase it for themselves as well. So announce it on your social media, put it in your portfolio. If the client does anything special, forward stuff for the client. So if the client says, okay, we're having our grand opening, forward that information, retweet that information, share that information. The client will appreciate it that much more. And if you put something out, make sure you tag the client so that they can then share it as well. They're really going to want to help spread the word. So those are just some of the things. As I said, the offboarding process has to be unique. You have to tailor it to you and your business. So you may have stuff that I have not mentioned here, or you may do stuff a little bit differently than I mentioned here. But you need to have some sort of offboarding process in order to remind the clients of how great it was working with you and to encourage them to come back again in the future. Because once again, it's a lot easier to get work from an existing client than it is to try to get a new client. Now, of course, all of this takes into account that you actually did enjoy working with this client. However, there may be times when after a project is done, you don't feel that the client merits the full offboarding process. For example, maybe you've worked with a client and you realize that, after the last few weeks, the two of us really are not a good fit after all. In cases like these, you want to provide only as much information as to satisfy the client that their project is complete. So you hand over the files, you give them the access information. You let them know a firm time that this is the end of the project. Now, you can forego in these instances all the retention parts of the process. So everything that was in there in order to get the client to come back. So maybe if this wasn't that great an experience, you don't send a thank you card or you don't ask the client to refer you, whatever. Now, this is not to say that the client won't come back to you in the future. You did do an amazing job on their project after all, but you can minimize that encouragement that you offer them. And if they do come back, then it's up to you to decide if it's in your best interest to work with them again. So once again, your offboarding process needs to be geared to you and to your business. But do keep in mind that the whole process, both onboarding and offboarding, is to prepare the client for the next go-around and to encourage them to make that sooner rather than later. Now, next week, I'm going to publish the final part of this series. I thought this week would be the final one, but I decided to break this into two. And next week, I'm going to talk about the goodbye packet. We talked about the intro packet. Well, now I'm going to talk about the goodbye packet, which is a way to package up everything that I told you about today into a nice, neat package to give your client. So tune in next week for the final part of this series that'll round out the whole relationship building part of working with clients. Now, I would love to know what your client offboarding process looks like. Please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 165 and leave me a comment. Let me know. What do you do for client offboarding? Is there anything special that you do? Is there anything that you found really works in getting clients to refer you, to talk about you, or coming back sooner rather than later? I would love to know. So that's it for this week's episode. I'm not going to have a question of the week this week. I'm going to hold off the questions until after this series is done. I'm running a little bit low anyways, so if you have a question that you'd like me to answer in a future episode of the podcast, please visit resourcefuldesigner.com/feedback and you could submit it there. I would love to answer it, but I'm going to forego them for the remainder of this series in order to concentrate just on the whole onboarding and offboarding process. I really want you to take what I'm saying to heart here. Many designers don't go through all these various steps, and it's those designers that are struggling and are having trouble sustaining their business. The ones who take these extra steps, go the extra mile, and follow these various procedures are the ones that are getting clients coming back over and over and over again, and the ones whose clients are really spreading the word to help grow their business. I started off very small when I opened my business in 2005. And since then, it's been growing and growing because of a lot of these steps that I use every client I get. And considering that I don't advertise, I don't even have a website for my own business, and yet my business continues to grow and prosper, I account all of that to my client onboarding, my client offboarding, and the relationships that I build with clients. And I know you can do the same. So I hope you're enjoying this series, and I hope you join me last week for the final part. Until then, I am Mark DeCote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business, and as always, reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.